Great Britain experienced very heavy aerial bombardment during World War II, during what's known as the Blitz, the German assault designed to wear down British morale and industrial output through heavy bombing raids on London and many other cities and towns. Less heavy raids continued through to the end of the war, and coupled with the V1 and V2 rocket campaigns did enormous damage and took thousands of lives. For example, German bombing of Britain resulted in the destruction of 700,000 homes, a figure worth remembering. Many of these raids resulted in German aircraft being shot down by anti-aircraft guns, defending fighters, or brought down by barrage balloon cables. But you won't find the wrecks of these German aircraft in Britain today, except in the seas that surround the British Isles, where they occasionally reappear, such as this rare Dornier 17 bomber, located in a sandbank off England's south coast and recovered a few years ago. The only World War II plane wrecks that still remain are to be found in the mountainous regions of Britain, where recovery and scrapping was hampered by terrain and weather. But they are not German aircraft, rather British and American planes lost in accidents during the war. Little remains of these aircraft, having been picked over by hardy scrap merchants and hikers for decades or covered by nature. In fact, within England and Wales today, there is only one German aircraft wreck, and what remains is but a tiny fraction of the plane. This is all that remains today of a Heinkel 111, shot down on the 14th of April 1941, that crashed on top of a Welsh mountain. But you may be surprised to learn that one German plane wreck does remain in the UK, located in one of the most isolated places in Britain, a tiny island in the far north off the Scottish coast, a wreck largely unknown to the population, but the most complete World War II German plane wreck still in Britain, the Fair Isle Heinkel. Fair Isle is located in the Shetlands, a collection of small islands in northern Scotland. Fair Isle is the most remote inhabited island in Britain, sitting halfway between the Shetlands and the Orkney Islands. Until 1469, Fair Isle belonged to Denmark, but was given to the Scottish king as part of the dowry of his new Danish wife. The island measures only 1,900 acres or 768 hectares, and today has a population of only 48 people, who live as crofters and produce famous knitted sweaters. How a German Heinkel 111 bomber ended up crashing on Fair Isle, of all places, is a reflection of how the tiny island suddenly became important during the war. The Royal Air Force had constructed a radar station on top of the 712-foot-high Ward Hill. German aircraft came into the area fairly frequently, flying weather missions. The Germans needed accurate weather reports for bombing and U-boat operations, and specially modified bombers ranged far and wide collecting data. This was dangerous work, for though the Orkneys and the Shetlands appeared to be out-of-the-way places, they contain many important military and naval facilities, including the huge British naval base at Scapa Flow. RAF aircraft patrolled the area, and in January 1941, No. 3 Squadron, flying Hawker Hurricanes, was based at RAF Sombra on the southern tip of the Shetlands. In fact, the Shetlands was the very first place in Britain attacked by the Germans. In November 1939, a German plane dumped its load of bombs, resulting in the tragic death of a single wild rabbit. German planes attacked the 2 Fair Isle lighthouses on several occasions, killing the wives of 2 keepers and a child, and an army gunner manning nearby anti-aircraft weapons. The Heinkel 111 H2 on weather reconnaissance on the 17th of January 1941 was pounced on by hurricanes and badly shot up. There was no way pilot Lieutenant Hans Turz could make it back to base at Oldenburg in Germany. He brought the big plane in to make a crash landing in a field at Warstetter, 2 of the 5 crew being killed on impact. Unarmed crofters were soon at the scene of the crash, and relieving Lieutenant Türz and wireless operator Feldwebel Josef Wohlfahrt and engineer Unteroffizier Bernhard Lüking of their pistols, Islander George Stout made a citizen's arrest. A detachment of Royal Navy sailors arrived soon after to take over. But getting the 3 Luftwaffe prisoners off the island turned into a bit of an ordeal for all involved. The day after the crash, 18th of January 1941, an RAF launch sent to rescue them ran aground at the southern end of the island. A second launch also ran aground. On the 19th of September, the Lerwick lifeboat was sent and managed to finally retrieve the Germans and take them to Shetland. This occurred on Lieutenant Türz's 21st birthday. The wrecked Heinkel was picked over by the RAF for anything of intelligence interest and then partially scrapped. But a surprising amount of the plane still remains in situ today, 80 years after it crashed. Both engines remain, the wings having long been scrapped. A large section of the rear fuselage and tailplane also remains on the grass, forgotten and left to the elements and the rabbits. It is surprising that the remains, which are fairly valuable from an historical perspective, haven't yet been salvaged for a museum or restoration project. Genuine World War II era Heinkel 111s are rather thin on the ground today, there being only 2 examples on display in Britain. One at the RAF Museum at Hendon in London, and another being slowly restored at the Kent Battle of Britain Museum at Hawkinge. This particular Heinkel has proved to be an amazing surprise to all involved. Originally housed at the Imperial War Museum, Duxford, where I saw it many times over the decades in various states of disassembly, it was always listed as a Casa II 111, a Spanish-built copy of the wartime aircraft. In 1943, the Spanish received 6 Heinkel HE-111 H-16s from the Luftwaffe to produce their license-built copy from. The Duxford Heinkel was eventually sold to the Kent Battle of Britain Museum and delivered for restoration and display. However, during restoration work in 2019, it was discovered, to the surprise of everyone, that far from being a Casa copy, the aircraft is in fact a genuine wartime Heinkel 111 H-16, and one of the 6 originally given to Spain in 1943 by Nazi Germany. As for the Heinkel wreck up in Scotland, Fair Isle's isolation and remoteness has ensured that some of this historically important aircraft still remains in 2022 where it fell, and it has now become a tourist attraction in its own right, and of course a memorial to what British people underwent in World War II. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, details in the description box below.